Welcome to this very, very inspiring, I'm sure, going to be session for Literati 2020, which is being organized by Chandigarh Literary Society. It's wonderful to have with us the very illustrious and very famous author, Sudha Murthy ji. Welcome, ma'am.
Namaste.
Namaste, ma'am. I must tell you that you inspired so many people across India that whoever I invited to watch this program, they all said we will be there. Otherwise, normally they are so busy that they say, yeah, I'll watch it some other time whenever I send them some invitation. But today, everybody wants to tune in. I think that is what true happiness and success must be for you. So my first question to you, ma'am, your life has been inspiring to others. And is that something that you have deliberately worked towards, or has it just happened to you as you have been yourself?
I come from a middle class family. So I never worked for any success. When I was a student, I definitely worked for academic success. That as a student, I wanted to excel because my background was different. In my engineering college, I was the only girl. So I just wanted to prove that girls also can do engineering. I joined engineering before you people were born in 1968. So I wanted to show it. Look, girls can do, because they always used to think it's a man's domain and a girl cannot do. So I wanted to show, look, girls can do. So I did work a lot for academic success. Later, I worked for Infosys to build Infosys with Narayan Murthy, and that I worked for many years, maybe 20, 25 years. But more than that, I have never kept an aim like I should become successful. You have written a book on success. What is success is very difficult to define. For some people, success means money. For some people, it's a name. For some people, it's a power. For some people, it's a beauty. So it's very difficult to define what is success. For me, success means no regret. Whatever work you do, if there is no regret and you are content inside, that is success. This I got it with my work, but I never worked for that. I worked because it came to me and I enjoyed working in that. In the process, I got success. My aim was never to get success in that, to get the whatever work I have, to do it sincerely and passionately.
Wonderful, ma'am. In fact, that is what every successful person will also say, that when you are too desperate for something, it doesn't come to you. But when you are working earnestly and hard, it comes to you. In fact, just for the record, I was born in 1966, so I was there when 1968.
That time I was in 10th class, okay, when you were born.
So, ma'am,
there is a saying, actually, there is a saying, if you run after money, money runs away. If you run after your passion, money comes behind you.
Right. Absolutely correct. Absolutely. And in fact, your inspiring story of being the first topper among the ladies of the engineering the branches in the whole of Karnataka, in probably in MTech. That really inspired us.
BE, I stood first, not in among all the girls, among all the boys.
Among everybody, I know.
Among everybody.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, ma'am, what I want to ask you is another inspiring story so that we can kick off the discussion. You wrote to Mr. J.R.D. Tata a postcard, and this question has been asked to you many times, I know, but it is very important for my context. You wrote a letter or postcard to Mr. J.R.D. Tata that why are ladies not allowed to join telco? Because the advertisement said ladies or girls may not apply. Now, you broke the mold for the first time over there. Of course, you topped in engineering. Now you did this. And then you actually joined telco because your father told you to join instead of pursuing PhD, because you had committed that you had actually broken the way for the ladies to join. So tell us about that part, and also if you can add a little bit about when Narayan Murthy Saab was to pick you up and you were getting late, he was getting late to pick you up, and Mr. J.R.D. Tata stood with you and waited. Please tell us about this.
I think it is on the internet so many times. People must have read it, I suppose.
We want to hear it from you.
Horse's mouth, okay. Well, in the year 1974, I was young and energetic and, idealist and all those things. And like what Churchill said, at the age of 20, if you are not an idealist, you don't have heart, you don't have a heart, and you continue to be, then you continue to be, and you don't have brain. So I wanted to go abroad and do my PhD, but one day I saw the notice board, a notice saying that Telco has come to recruit young, bright engineers and all those things. I just read that because I did not have any plan to join, and at the bottom it was written, "Lady students need not apply," and that made me very upset. Then I took a postcard and I wrote to JRD Tata saying that a company like yours have such an old idea. I'm really surprised because in a society, 50% of the women are not allowed to work. That means your efficiency is reduced by 50%. And if somebody else does, I can understand, but not Billowell and Tata's, because you've always been ahead of time. You had your iron and steel, you had your locomotive, you had your chemicals, you had your salt. So you were always ahead of time. And you people put such a condition. I said, I'm really surprised. And I wrote to in a postcard and sent it to him without even knowing what will happen to that. I did see JRD a couple of times in Indian Institute of Science, where Tata's have given a lot of money to build that. And I've seen JRD used to come for a Founders Day, and I was an ordinary, I was an ordinary family girl. I'm not VIP or well connected. There's nothing like that. I was a good student, but from a middle class family. I used to stand and see him, and I always felt he was so handsome, like a Greek statue. I used to feel. More than that, I never knew anything about him. I wrote and I forgot. I thought they will put it to the dustbin, but I was very upset, so I wrote. To my surprise, I got a reply saying that no, you should come to Pune for interview, and at our expense, first class, they wrote. I never traveled by first class by train. In those days, there was no plane from Bangalore to Pune. So first class plane itself was a great thing for me. I said, okay, anyway, at their expense, let me go and attend the interview. So I attended the interview. I did very well in the interview. And they explained to me why they never wanted to take a girl. They said, the part of Telco was in Bihar, and there's a plant known as the Jojobara, where they have 1,000 machines, and they are not used to seeing a girl, and you have to stay in a hostel. All those problems will be there. But then I told them, when Huinat Sangh in 629 AD started his journey from Xi'an to Kannauj, everyone said, how will you pass the desert? How will you climb the mountains? How will you go to that unknown country? Better stay in China. That time he said, for every 10,000 li journey, there's always a one step to start. And I'm starting it right now. And that is the way he did. And ultimately, in the history of the human kind, that his name is etched in a golden color, because he was the one who really did that journey and showed to the world advantage of traveling and seeing it and achieving it gives a greater pleasure. So I said, if you take that stand that women cannot do because of the practical difficulty, then no day a woman will work. And is it not a national waste? And they were quite happy, and they offered me a job. And I was not keen to take up because I wanted to do my PhD at MIT. I got fellowships in 5 universities. So when I told to my father, on the way I got down from train, there's a place known as the Hubli. I belong to a place known as the Hubli on the en route to Pune. So I thought my father would say, "Oh, what a smart girl you are." But my father said, "What a foolish girl you are. How can you write a postcard to a big man, a great person like JRD? You could have written in a band lifafa." I said, it cost five paisa in those days. Then he says, why do you don't want to take? I said, no, I'm going abroad. He said, then why did you write to him if you are not supposed to join? And you opened the Pandora box asking why women should not be given equal importance. And when it is given, if you are not taking, then you will be a selfish person. If you go abroad, my father told me, knowing our people, if you go abroad, you are not exception, you won't come back. You are in impressionable age of 23, 24, and you go, you'll do your PhD, then you marry someone there and you'll settle there. You won't come. But when you open the Pandora box and asking that, look, why women are not equal when they have done so well, that means you should show them they are equal. And if you don't take it, then you are only a talker. You are not a doer. A person should be identified for what they talk than what they do, than what they talk. So he said, the decision is yours, but I'm not happy the way you are thinking. It took a week for me. Then I tore with a teary eyed, eyes. I tore my admission card, and then I joined Telco. And those days were also that we used to respect our parents and what they talk. It really means a lot with their experience. My dad used to tell me, experience is the best teacher, but extremely expensive teacher. So it is better to hear or take advantage of elderly people at home and their advice, because they have already paid fees for that and they have learned. So I felt my father told is true when I opened such an equality case. And if I don't join, they say, look, only women talk and they don't do. And after joining, I felt it the responsibility I should do very well so that the doors for other girls will be opened. And that is how things happened.
That's how it happened. So inspiring.
The rest is history.
The rest is history. And girls who are watching this, that's why I wanted you to repeat this, even though it's on the internet. But you're saying it really gives inspiration, because a lot of young ladies and women, when they watch this, they can break the mold themselves to be by being inspired by what you said and what you did. And your father, I mean, the way he kind of gave you a very practical advice was also fabulous. I mean, MIT would have been great, but this I think is greater, and that is fabulous.
Yeah, I definitely feel. I don't have father now; he passed away. But I feel the contribution or the lives I have touched in India is much more important than my MIT PhD. I would have been a director of a company and I would have retired. But this has much more meaning. And I learned a lot of lessons in House of Tatas, like what you said, JRD. Once, after 5:30, I was getting down and I saw JRD. He was coming out of his office and he was about to get into his car. And then he saw me. He used to call me my maiden name. My maiden name was Kulkarni, but I'm not a Maharashtrian like you. Okay.
I'm also not really a Maharashtrian. It's okay.
But I can speak that language. I can speak, but I'm not. So he said, Kulkarni, why are you waiting? Then I said, sir, my husband is coming and I'm waiting for him. He's going to pick me up. Then he waited. I was feeling extremely uncomfortable. I said, no, sir, you carry on. He said, no. It's 5:30. It was November or December. It was to get dark early. He said, no, until a lady candidate like you, staying alone in a big building, I won't feel comfortable. So he stood until Mr. Murthy came. And that care for the employees, I learned there. Care for the girls when we hire them, that I learned. The ABC of philanthropy, I learned there. How you should treat philanthropy seriously. Not that, give money, go, okay, give some percentage of money, let it go anywhere, I will not check. I'll only write the check. No, that is not true. Is it effective? Is it useful? Has it touched the lives of the people? All those basic alphabets of philanthropy, I learned the school of Tatas.
Wonderful, ma'am. In fact, I use this story many times in my talks on emotional intelligence. That's why I wanted to hear it from you, Mr. Tata, waiting outside. Empathy. And wonderful. But let us jump to your writing, and we'll come back to philanthropy and Mr. Murthy also later. Let us jump to your writing. Now, your writing career has been so magical in many ways. People connect so much with your books. They really love the characters and the simplicity and the readable chapters. I can read 1 or 2 chapters and then sit down. I'm busy, and then again I can pick up from where I left off. So, how did you come to be such a potent writer in terms of bringing out the nature of India, and how was your writing journey?
I really want to tell one thing. How do I write? I really do not know. That I think Mata Saraswati is Ashirvad. That I want to tell first. My writing journey started in a very young age. In a school, I used to write good essays. In college, I used to write good essays. But in engineering college, I could never write, because in engineering, it is A plus B is equal to C, where the English in between, there is no English also.
I'm also an electronics engineer, by the way, ma'am. I also know that. We also learned later.
There is no English. It is only equation and communication, and the things are working or not. But I started writing again once I started working. And my first book came when I was 28 years old. In 1960, 78, 79, my first book came. And it was in Kannada, my mother tongue. And I'm a Kannada medium 10th class, Unlike other English writers. I belong to Karnataka. Shruti Khurana always tells me, you have a unique way of living and it's nice. I said, what is that? She said, you are born in Karnataka, and you speak that language. Your parents, grandparents, you can trace your family all in Karnataka. Then you speak that language at home and also outside. You can write and you have readership. Look at my life, she says. For example, her ancestors were from Peshawar and Multan. So from there, my grandparents came and settled in Delhi. So my parents were raised in Delhi, and then they were in Chandigarh, and then they came to Bangalore and settled in Bangalore. Now I can't speak Punjabi because I'm away from Punjab, and I don't have any Punjabi friends here because it's a cosmopolitan city, and I speak English and Hindi. And when I want to see my roots are not there. My relations are, some of them are abroad and some of them are in Delhi. And I don't speak local language, though I want to an extent what you enjoy. So where are my roots? Where are my relations? Well, that question comes to me. Whereas for you, it is not a question. So that is one of the reasons that I feel extremely proud about Kannada. Is my whole life is in Karnataka. I stayed 10 years in Bombay. That's a different story. And I enjoy my Kannada roots, my culture, my language, our poems, our history. I'm bound to my culture. And that's the reason my expression of thought was always in Kannada. And I was a Kannada medium 10th class. And I learned English only when I passed out 10th class, I was not able to write one paragraph of English.
But you learned it very quickly after that. You write so well now.
Yeah. And I started writing in English at the age of 50.
I see.
Until that, I only wrote in Kannada. Kannada was my strength, my emotion. So I wrote my first book. I traveled on backpack in 1978, America, with very $300 or $400. And it's today, if you write, people will laugh. But 42 years back, and from a small town like Hubli, everybody is like, how is America? How is America? So I wrote my journey on a backpack in America. So that is my first book. And then I started writing in Kannada in the form of books, actually. Up to 2000, I wrote everything in Kannada. After 2000 AD, that means when I became 50, I started writing columns in the paper in English. And my first book is Wise and Otherwise. That is this collection of my columns. And it met with a huge success. Then I realized, okay, even I can write in English. And then my English journey continued for the last 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
Wonderful, ma'am. In fact, your books really connect with the roots of India. So talk about that, and also your latest writings. They are so connected with the earth and with the culture and the family and the practices and the thought processes. Wonderful expression.
Because I write truth. And truth is stranger than fiction, actually. And I work with poorest of the poor people. My experiences in foundation is so real. So people can connect connect to the incident. Suppose I write about rich people, fantastic, intelligent people, fantastic singing, extraordinary romance and all. It doesn't exist in real life.
No.
Even rich people will have their own difficulties. People don't understand that. So if I go on writing about always with my imagination, which is not reality, people don't connect. As an author, Vivekji, you may be knowing, you write
Please
about...
call me Vivek. Yes.
You have to respect people. Respect people, whatever may be. Guna sthanam nachalingam navayam. It says it is not the age, it is not what they are, or how beautiful they are, or how they studied. As a human being, we should always respect another human being. Okay. So I want to ask you this one. When you write novels, your readership is limited. When you write improving life or something life-changing books, you will become more popular because people would like to read and change their life. And you are more connected with the people. As a speaker, if you talk about all the time about something about a life in a moon or more of an imagination, people won't come. Rather, a person who studied your book and did well in his life, or a person who studied and faced life courageously, people appreciate that.
That's true. And in fact, your latest books are even more so because I have also seen Wise and Otherwise. I've been through your other books. I've read them. And the latest book, Grandparents' Bag of Tales. I mean, it used to be grandma and now it has become grandparents. So there must be some secret behind that. And also I see that you have also included a chapter called 40 Days of Quarantine in that. So it's a very latest work. So talk about this one.
Yeah. My latest book is Grandparents' Bags of Stories. And this I wrote in a COVID time. And I was just thinking, when I became a grandmother, I thought the best gift we can give to grandchildren is always a story. So I wrote Grandma's Bags of Stories to my granddaughter, Krishna. She's in London now. So I wrote to her, I wrote for her. Then, COVID time, I said, why only grandfather, grandmother? Men also tell stories, women also tell stories. So I made a character there by the name Kamlu, who is who is a real life character, who is the sister of Narayan Murthy. And she comes for a holiday, COVID time she comes. And that time, all three of us told stories, but grandmother little more because she's well versed with the stories. Grandfather few, Kamlu Atte or Kamlu Bua told some stories. And children should learn. Everybody should not complain, oh, COVID time, I'm getting bored. Sharing is caring. So grandmother started helping others. So grandchildren learn there how to help others in COVID time. So and a sense of gratitude, because there's always a way you can be unhappy. When you have a sense of gratitude, you're always happy. Keeping that in mind, I wrote Grandparents' Bags of Stories.
You also have in that a chapter, The Real Medicine. So just talk about that, man. What is the real medicine for humankind?
It's a compassion, affection, and what is EQ is a real medicine. In the sense, a hug, an affectionate hug, a genuine console, a genuine compassion, and genuine love for learning is the real medicine.
In fact, that love, yes, go on.
No, even though you have the right medicine, there is a shloka in the Sanskrit. It says, Aushadam Jannami Toyam Vaidyo Narayan Maharihi. If you respect and love your doctor, because Lord Vishnu or Narayana comes in the form of a doctor, you should have faith in doctor. And even though he gives water, and it becomes Aushadam Jannavi Toyam, Ganga's water also will become a medicine if you have love, respect towards your doctor. Because my father was a doctor, and I've seen what affection people had in those days, and what authority my father had. He said, as a patient, you may not understand, but I will always do the best for you. If you meet such a doctor who does best for you without charging you too much and caring for you, and that compassion makes you better. In England, they were telling, I was talking to a doctor. He said, a doctor may be a great person. A doctor knows the medicine, but 30% of marks are given for the bedside manners. I said, what is this, a bedside manner? He says, you have to tell patient the first thing is, please do not worry. You'll be all right. Please do not worry. I have seen many cases like this. They were all cured and they were all right. Don't worry. So what? You have a small difficulty, but it's a curable difficulty. Even though it's not curable, still you can pass the mountain. Ultimately what is going to happen happens. Don't give false promise, but keep a good bedside manners. By looking at you, the patient should feel better. And this is known as compassion. Because already when you are sick, you are worried, you are down, you are depressed. And in that you're saying, no, you won't be cured. And, next patient, when the person is diagnosed something wrong, think, okay, take treatment. Next person, if you do, that is not correct. You have to spend some time with them. And that is a valuable, compassionate time, which makes many times patient to face reality, even though however hard it is.
That's absolutely true, ma'am. In fact, I often tell people that compassion doesn't reduce your passion. In Hindi, we say "kam" means less. Compassion doesn't mean that your passion is less. It means that you are working more for others and you can actually help society more. But I want to ask you, ma'am, you've been a daughter, a sister, a mother, you've been a grandmother, you are a grandmother, and this role of women in Indian society has been so important to keep together the family, the roots, the traditions, that love and care. Often in Western countries, people miss, and even in India, in some families, because of nuclear families, etc., it is reducing. So please talk about the role of women and how do you feel as
Just because one has a nuclear family, that does not mean the culture is gone or the culture is reduced. Today, in a cosmopolitan city like Bangalore, Bombay, Pune, Delhi, it is most of the time it is essential for both couple to work because things are very expensive. Okay, and again, women are well educated; they don't want to sit at home. It doesn't mean always you have to take up a professional job, but people also do not want to sit at home. They want to come out. I'm sure your daughter says, "I will do some work. I don't want to be at home."
absolutely.
It is nice that women are working. Now, theoretically, when all things are fine as long as you have only two of us staying. Things or the balance changes when you have a child. Theoretically, both of them should give their 50% to the child. But it is not possible because a mother is different than a father. That's something we call mother tongue because mother spends more time with the child. Second thing, mother comes out of the woman's, the child comes out of the mother's body. So every mother thinks the child is her extension. So she has so much care for the child. Father cares in a different way. It is not the same way. So when the child comes, the balance is now disturbed. A woman cannot work the way she was working. Men normally in olden days never used to help. Today they have to help, but people are helping. Things go well as long as things are fine. But once you have difficulties, the child is not well. You are not well. That time the nuclear families suffer because you don't have a supporting people. In a joint family, you have always support. Joint family should have its own difficulties. A joint family has its own difficulties because
Yes.
you should get along well. If you stay under one chat and you fight, what is the use? You should have very good understanding. There is a saying in Kannada and in Sanskrit. What is the most difficult thing in life? The most difficult thing in life is understanding another human being. Because we misunderstand 80% of the time.
Yes.
Who has the time? Immediately misunderstand. By default, you misunderstand. So, if you have good understanding, then only joint family is useful. And when you have that time, if you have no understanding, better have nuclear family. In nuclear family, you should have a support system. That's the reason I say a building should not be built on one pillar. A life building should be built with many pillars.
Yes.
Many pillars, maybe friends, cousins, neighbors, everything. A woman is like Ganga. Ganga is a woman. She flows from Himalayas to Sagar in Bengal. So is a woman's life. Ups and downs and many relations. Like Ganga crosses many cultures, many states. Similarly, woman's life is like that. She has many relations, everything, but Ganga keeps her name and purity, in a way, theoretically purity. Similarly, woman is the one who carries the culture, gives the next generation. Next generation at least may not be 100% what my mother did. I was not able to make 100%, but I'm able to contribute at least 50% of that. But it won't come automatically. You have to put an effort. If you want your children should carry your culture, first you should carry the culture.
Yes.
And you should tell children, and that's what I have written in my 4 books of mythology. You want to tell your children the epics of India. First, the mother should read the epics of India. Okay? And so mothers have to work harder than others to know our culture. Maybe a puja, maybe our mythology, maybe the family custom, maybe the family god. I always tell women, once in a year, if you have a family god, please go and come back. And make this a habit with your children when they grow up. Whenever you have difficulties, it is not that you have to go to Devi or the temple only when you have difficulties. It gives you a strength in life to face God will help us. To get that strength, you should have faith in God. whatever may be your religion, you should have faith in your own religion or in your own God. Because if, many times you ask me that in Western culture, my daughter was telling me in New York City, if there are X number of people are there, then X number of counselors are also there. Okay. Okay. So there are a lot of counselors in Western culture because they do not know with whom they talk, whom to believe, where the faith is there. Whereas we, a great faith in God helps you that I have done level best. God, please help the remaining portion. Don't become a calm chore, but I have done my level best and you do remaining things. A good faith can stop you for the mental diseases to a great extent.
Absolutely, ma'am. In fact, the grandparents' bag of stories is obviously going to be a wonderful compilation, and looking forward that everybody should read it. The point is that you speak from the heart. I can see that, and that is how you write. Also, you write from the heart. It is not filtered by the brain. As far as I can see, it is coming straight from you, and that is what really works for you. But to add to that point, I also want to ask you of your relationship now as a wife with Mr. Narayan Murthy, how wonderful this marriage has been, and how you have both inspired so many people. And now, today, he being an iconic figure in the world industry, you being a successful author and an inspiring figure in your own right, is there some professional rivalry, or is it all love and homogeneity?
No. First of all, it's understanding. When Mr. Murthy was very busy, I never complained for 25 years because I assumed that is not the way to live. I realized that is not what we should do. Because it was very unusual way of living, because Murthy used to travel 200 to 250 days in a year. No wife will take it. And there were two small children. We were not economically well off in those days. I had to drive and drop them to school, pick them up, sit with them, homework, everything. So I said, what you assume in marriage is, oh, husband will help, he will do. All those things are not true for me, because my husband is building an empire called Infosys, a circus called Infosys, an adventure called Infosys. And it is in one lifetime, if you want to build, then it's like a tapas. He has to spend so much time on the company. He's not enjoying it, going every day out, but he has to do for the company. Otherwise, I should accept that. Don't assume your life will be like this. Realize your life will be like this. Your husband travels, and it is your responsibility that you have to look after children and family and earn money also. So when you understand that, then your equation with your husband will be different. Similarly, he understands my compassion for my work, because I'll be traveling so much. And he says she has a passion to help others. So she has to travel to different parts of India and meet poorest of the poor. So he never complains. When you understand each other, you don't require to compare, compel, and professional jealousy.
That's absolutely correct, ma'am. And also, we are proud of the fact that your son-in-law, Mr. Rishi Sunak, is the Chancellor of the Exchequer in the UK. You must be very proud of him as well. I mean, you started off from Hubli, and you talked about very middle-class upbringing, and now today this is a world-conquering family.
It's all God's wish. And my son-in-law is from Punjab, of undivided India. But he's about 100 years back or 150 years back, they have left. And this is I consider is a Punjabi Munda has done well. Indian they are very proud in Mata Vaishnav Devi. They are very proud that our Munda is done well. It's Mata's kripa on him, I suppose.
I think people who are listening here, because ultimately this is being hosted by the Chandigarh Literary Society, and people of Punjab and the region will be very happy to hear that.
Yeah.
But I also want to ask you about the Infosys Foundation and how this is helping people throughout India, and how much it is contributing to the care of the society.
In the last 25 years, we are working for the care of the society. We have spent more than 1,000 crore rupees by this time. More than that, much more than that.
Yeah, I didn't really mean the amount, though it sounded like that, but wonderful.
Yeah. More than that, maybe nearly 2,000 crores. I have lost track of that. I only look at the work. I never look at the money side. Name a thing which we have not done. That is the best way I think I can tell the work. Name anything which we have not done. We have built roads. We have cleaned talabs. We have made lakes. We have built hospitals, orphanages, then sarais, schools, drinking water, working with the prostitutes, handling 14 national disasters, handling a pandemic. Name a thing which we have not done. We have done everything. We have done everything in 24 years in different parts of India, but mostly in the south. And now we have started working in the north. We are building a sarai or a dharmashala in Jhajjar for AIMS hospital. Then we have worked in farming in Jharkhand with the farmers. We have made a drinking water facility in Andhra. Then somewhere we are working in Madhya Pradesh with the farmers, etc. And pandemic time we spent 150 crore rupees, and we have done a lot of work. We distributed 24 lakhs of masks. Okay, and 25 lakhs of meals for people, dry ration. Then 1 lakh of ration packets to 1 lakh families we helped. Then ventilators we bought more than 150 or 200. I have really lost track. And post-COVID hospitals. Then renovated a hospital and gave it for COVID. We donated for COVID. A lot of work. But all this work makes me extremely happy than buying a property or buying a good dress, buying a jewelry, because helping people gives maximum happiness than anything else. There is a shloka in Sanskrit. A tree stands in a scorching sun. And even though the tree is suffering, it gives shade to needy people. It makes a home for many, many birds. It gives green leaves for the cattle. It gives fruits for all the people who eat. But the tree doesn't get anything other than the happiness of giving to everybody.
Wonderfully well said. And I must also ask you in this connection, how you remain so calm and cheerful and creative despite so many responsibilities?
Because what is the whole thing is transient, I feel. The whole thing is transient. Nothing is permanent in life, like Buddha said, nothing is permanent. If you have something, it will go away. Nothing is permanent in life. So why worry about so much?
I guess so. And that inner victory, that calmness, that maybe meditation, maybe God-centeredness.
I think my work is my meditation. My work is my meditation. My work is my holiday. My work is my holiday. And that's, I think so.
Ma'am, we are about to close, but I would like you to give a message to the young people of India and what they should look forward to in life. Are you optimistic about their future? How should they generally conduct themselves? What is the future of India?
I tell the next generation people, look, I am a setting sun. Okay, 5 o'clock sun. You people are 10 o'clock sun, 8 o'clock sun. You are yet to rise. So I want to tell you following things. You should have, number one, a very good work ethic. So nobody is seeing me, still I will do my work very well. This is the work ethic. And this work ethic will really lead you a better position in life than cheating or saying that, oh, I will somehow manage. Don't do that. Work ethic is a skill which always get you what you want in life. Because there is a movie by the name The Last Emperor. You've seen that. The Emperor Pu of the China. Throughout his life, he was an emperor. He never learned. At the end, he did not know what to do. And he learns when he was arrested and he kept in the prison. He learns gardening. And he says, skill is very important in life. Please remember, however rich or however poor you are, you should have a skill in your life. And skill along with ethics can always get you a better life. Second thing is, there is no shortcut to success other than hard work. There is no shortcut. Shortcut always puts you one or other day difficulties. Always. But hard work always gives you happiness. And the end of life, you turn back and said, look, I have done the following things. Third thing is, be compassionate, be proud about your country. Because there are always ways to make say, oh, Indians are like that. No. Be proud about your country because of various reasons. Kindly study the history of your country. That we might have lost some battles, but we have won many wars. Like the great scientists, the great surgeons, and all those people were there in the past. That shows we had the capability, we did not use it. Be proud about your heritage, your culture, and your country. Don't undermine that and say West is always the best. No. With the Western good value system like work ethics, punctuality, okay, and caring more for the society than for personal good or the community good, they care more for the community good. We care for the personal good. Me and my wife, my family, and my house should be great. Outside it will be whatever it be. No, we should care from the community good. In that, your house, your personal good also comes. And get some of these good values from the West, and then have the best values from India, and marry both of them and live happily. East is East and West is not true. Some of the best values of West, best of our country, you marry them, you can live a very successful life. And not last but not the least is compassion. Give something back to the society. Not, I will give back to my parents. That is your kartavya. That's your duty. Give back to the society in a very small way. Even though you can give 100 rupees or shamadana, you put your time in that. It's worth it. Your school, your college, okay, your alma mater, or your country and our soldiers. Please give something back in terms of time, or in terms of money, or in terms of some whatever it is which is going to help our country. Please do. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, ma'am. You're so inspiring. I'm sure everybody will be very inspired. On behalf of CLS Literati, I must thank you for being with us, and keep smiling and keep inspiring us. Thank you.
Thank you.